His Excellency Mr. Ayman bin Abdurrahman, Prime Minister of the People's Democratic Republic of Algeria. His Excellency Mr. Wycliffe Musalia Mudavadi, Prime Cabinet Secretary of the Republic of Kenya. His Excellency Mr. Philippe Istorm Pango, Vice President of the United Republic of Tanzania. His Excellency Mr. Salvador Antonio Valdez Mesa, Vice President of the Republic of Cuba. His Highness Sheikh Saud bin Sagar Al Qasimi, member of the Federal Supreme Council of the United Arab Emirates, ruler of the Emirates of Ras Al Khaimah. Her Excellency Ms. Rose Christian Osuka Raponda, Vice President of the Gabonese Republic. His Excellency Mr. Csaba Körösi, President of the United Nations General Assembly.
İşte bilmiyorum. İşte bilmiyorum.
Her Excellency Ms. Jelka Cvijanović, Chairwoman of the Presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Yo.
His Excellency Mr. Abdul Latif Jamal Rashid, President of the Republic of Iraq. His Excellency Mr. Mohammed Yunis Al-Manfi, President of the Presidential Council of the State of Libya. His Excellency Mr. Sardar Berdimuhamedov, President of Turkmenistan. His Excellency Mr. Shavkat Mirziyoyev, President of the Republic of Uzbekistan.
delegates sitting there yet?
تفضل على صور زي متضايقه ان انتوا طوال هتبقوا انتوا طوال بقى. طب تعالي هيك عشان ما تبينش
مع الإعلام
شيء بارز يا مو بيختن محمود اختو
تكمل يا خلا. لا سوري. Nasıl gol? Sağındaki solundaki.
Thank you.
رسول الله حرام عليك. لا يا رسول الله عيب يا رجل عيب والله. عيب يا رجل.
هلا والله شلونك؟ شلون صحتك؟ الاخبار؟ طيب ان شاء الله.
Costa, tu. Program. Dušana pošalda to po tehnike riješi.
سعادتك شو؟
All head of delegations, we kindly ask you to take your seats, please. Dear guests, you are kindly asked to take your seats, please. We shall start. Excellencies, we shall start. Please take your seats.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I warmly welcome you all in Baku, Azerbaijan, at the summit-level meeting of the Non-Aligned Movement Contact Group in response to COVID-19. More than 3 years ago, in this very hall, Azerbaijan assumed the chairmanship of NAM, which I can proudly say in the past few years have become one of the key players in international relations. Before starting our deliberations, I want to draw your attention to the following. As you all know, a few weeks ago, a devastating earthquake happened in Turkey and Syria. Being one of the most tragic natural disasters of our times, the earthquake claimed the lives of tens of thousands of people. I invite all participants of this summit to stand and observe a minute of silence in tribute to the memory of those who lost their lives. Allah rahmet eylesin. Thank you. We convey our deepest sadness on this terrible disaster and extend our condolences to the families and loved ones of the victims and wish speedy recovery to those injured. We can now start our deliberations. Before proceeding to the opening session, the summit-level meeting is to adopt the agenda. The provisional agenda for the summit-level meeting has been circulated among the delegations. Can I consider that there are no objections to the agenda? Thank you. Agenda of the summit-level meeting is hereby adopted. I will now deliver my opening statement in my capacity as the chair of Non-Aligned Movement. Distinguished heads of state and government, distinguished heads of delegations, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you all in Baku at the summit-level meeting of the NAM Contact Group in response to COVID-19 on post-pandemic global recovery. With the unanimous decision of NAM countries in 2019, Azerbaijan assumed the chairmanship of NAM for the period of 2019-2022. Our chairmanship was also extended by unanimous decision for 1 more year. We are grateful to the member states for their support of Azerbaijan's chairmanship. As a chair of NAM, our aim is to defend justice and international law. Right after the beginning of the pandemic, it was NAM that took the initiative to mobilize global efforts to counter COVID-19. We initiated the NAM online summit at the heads of state and government level in May 2020. The summit decided to establish the Non-Aligned Movement Task Force to work out a database. The World Health Organization used the database as a reference point for identifying the needs of NAM member states in addressing the pandemic. At that summit, I suggested convening the UN General Assembly special session at the leaders' level. This proposal gained huge support among the UN member states. The special session was held in December 2020 and was addressed by over 70 heads of state and government. The special session emphasized the need for increased international solidarity and recognized NAM's leadership in the fight against coronavirus. We considered vaccine nationalism pursued by some wealthy countries, among others, as a serious impediment in countering the pandemic. Subsequently, NAM initiated 2 resolutions for equitable and universal access to vaccines for all countries, adopted in the UN Human Rights Council and the UN General Assembly in 2021. NAM's leadership in mobilizing global efforts to fight the pandemic once more demonstrated the movement's influence and responsibility. Azerbaijan provided coronavirus-related financial and humanitarian support to more than 80 countries, most of those from our NAM family, either through bilateral channels or World Health Organization. Azerbaijan strongly supports the institutional development of the movement. We initiated the establishment of NAM Parliamentary Network. The first meeting of the NAM Parliamentary Network took place in Baku in June 2022. Furthermore, the Shusha Accords established the NAM Youth Organization in July 2022. The permanent secretariat of the NAM Youth Organization will be located in Baku. Our goal is to create institutional sustainability and to leave a successful legacy to the members who will take over the chairmanship after Azerbaijan. In 2021, during the high-level commemorative meeting which took place in Belgrade, I suggested the idea of the high-level meeting of the NAM member states with the aim to formulate the position of the movement concerning the post-COVID-19 era. With this in mind, I called this summit, which I believe will create an opportunity to discuss emerging global issues. The international security architecture, which has existed for the last several decades, is currently facing dramatic changes, and multilateralism is at stake. The erosion of international law norms and principles further threatens the international order. More cases of violation of sovereignty and territorial integrity and intervention in the internal affairs of states are observed. The decisions of the leading international organizations are not either implemented or the selective approach and double standards are being applied. The new world order is in the process of reshaping. Now the world is witnessing the most serious East-West confrontation since the end of the Cold War, with repercussions for the remaining part of the world. As the second largest international institution after the UN, NAM should play a more visible and efficient role in the international arena and actively participate in reshaping the new world order. Unfortunately, nowadays we observe a rising tendency towards neo-colonialism. NAM, which came into existence due to the historical decolonization process, should unify its efforts towards completely eliminating this shameful page of mankind. NAM always strongly supported the unquestionable sovereignty of the Union of Comoros over the island of Mayotte, which continues to be under the colonial rule of France. As reflected in fundamental NAM documents, we call on the French government to respect the rights of the New Caledonian people and other peoples in French overseas communities and territories. The French administrated territories outside Europe are nasty remains of the French colonial empire. We also call on France to apologize and admit its responsibility for its colonial past and bloody colonial crimes, and acts of genocide against non-member countries in Africa, Southeast Asia, and other places. Another important issue which has been discussed worldwide for many years is the UN system reforms. UN Security Council is reminiscent of the past and does not reflect the current reality. The composition of the Security Council should be expanded to make it more representative and more geographically fair. One permanent seat should be given to the non-aligned movement, and the country holding the position of chair of the movement should have this seat on a rotating basis. I call on non-member countries to start consultations on this issue and present their views to the relevant UN committee. We also support the allocation of permanent seat for Africa in the Security Council. The pandemic had a negative impact on the implementation of the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. The global efforts should be reinforced to prevent inter alia backsliding on targets and to catch up with the 2030 agenda. To this end, we suggested establishing a UN high-level panel on global recovery from COVID-19. This panel could elaborate recommendations on global measures for the post-pandemic period. I invite all non-members to support this initiative. We should further strengthen the South-South cooperation, guided by the principles of respect for sovereignty, national ownership, equality, and mutual benefit. Its agenda is set by countries of the South themselves, in line with their national needs and priorities, not imposed by the outside world. Climate change is another challenge for humanity, causing serious problems such as water scarcity, food insecurity, and forced migration. Small island development states deserve more attention in this regard, since they are more vulnerable to climate change impact and face an existential threat. As was the case during the COVID-19 pandemic, Azerbaijan will continue to provide financial and humanitarian assistance to countries in need. I declare 2 global calls to support the post-pandemic recovery of Africa and small island developing states. It's my pleasure to announce that Azerbaijan, as the first donor, is allocating $1 million for both global calls. I believe that non-members and other members of the international community will support Azerbaijan's initiative and will follow us in supporting the countries in need on their path to post-pandemic recovery. Ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned earlier, the UN Security Council is inefficient today. For example, some Security Council resolutions have been implemented within days. However, in the case of Azerbaijan, Armenia ignored the 4 Security Council resolutions demanding immediate and unconditional withdrawal of its armed forces from the territories of Azerbaijan for almost 30 years. In 2020, Azerbaijan itself restored its territorial integrity and historical justice by military political means and enforced the Security Council resolutions implementation. Probably it was the first case in the world since the establishment of the United Nations. During the years of occupation, hundreds of cities and villages in Azerbaijan were deliberately destroyed, and all cultural and religious sites were looted and plundered by Armenia. The liberated territories of Azerbaijan have been turned into a textbook example of urbicide, culturicide, and ecocide. Since the end of 2020, thousands of foreign diplomats, journalists, NGOs, and politicians, including from countries, have visited the liberated territories and witnessed the barbarism committed by Armenia. Azerbaijan conducts large-scale reconstruction work in the liberated territories with its own financial resources. The government of Azerbaijan spent about $4 billion for reconstruction work in 2021 and 2022. This year, we plan to allocate at least $1.7 billion for this purpose. We are building new cities and villages from scratch by applying modern urban planning and utilizing the concepts of smart city and smart village. It's a unique and unprecedented post-conflict development and reconstruction model led by national governments. Azerbaijan is among the most heavily mine-infested countries in the world due to the Armenian occupation. Some 300 Azerbaijanis have been killed and seriously injured in mine incidents since the end of the Second Karabakh War in November 2020. Given the paramount importance of humanitarian demining for the country, Azerbaijan is currently considering setting a particular national sustainable development goal. Azerbaijan sees a direct link between SDGs and demining, since mines slow down the reconstruction process in liberated territories and the return of former internally displaced persons. Azerbaijan actively promotes the initiative of launching the 18th SDG on demining. We invite NAM countries to support this initiative. Since a number of NAM member countries are among the most contaminated countries by mines and unexploded ordnances, I would like to suggest forming a like-minded group of mine-affected countries to make our voice heard globally. Shortly after the end of the conflict, Azerbaijan presented 5 basic principles for the peace agreement to Armenia, based on the mutual recognition of each other's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Using this opportunity, I would like to thank NAM countries for their firm stance in supporting the just position of Azerbaijan and not allowing one-sided and biased anti-Azerbaijani statements to pass in the UN Security Council, both in 2020 and 2022. In conclusion, I assure you that Azerbaijan, as a chair of NAM, will spare no effort in further defending the legitimate interests of NAM member states and increasing our movement's standing in the international arena. Thank you. We continue our proceedings. We have the pleasure to have with us today His Excellency Mr. Csaba Kőrösi, President of the 77th session of the United Nations General Assembly. We are looking forward to listening to your valuable remarks, Your Excellency. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, before anything else, let me thank President Heydar Aliyev for the kind invitation and Azerbaijan's generous hospitality to all of us. It is my privilege to address today's summit-level meeting of the non-aligned movements on post-COVID-19 recovery. Excellencies, we are in the era of the Anthropocene, an era in which the impact of human activity on our globe is of an unprecedented scale. An era when humanity steps ahead as the main shaper of what is happening on this planet and to this planet. Let us admit that the series of grave challenges triggered by COVID-19 has been the prototype of the Anthropocene era crisis. And the proliferation of these interlinked challenges around us gives today's meeting a particular actuality and urgency. The ravage of COVID has been the greatest global health crisis in a century. If the pandemic taught us one thing, it is that no one is safe until all we are safe. Because closing our borders and taking individual measures were not enough. It quickly transpired that the only way out of the pandemic was through solidarity, not only within our borders, but across them too. In a sense, COVID was a shrill trumpet call, reminding us of how important this norm is. The Bandung principles that underline such solidarity are as relevant today as they were when this group was founded in 1961. And thanks to the united global push launched by the non-aligned movement, we saw how far joint efforts can bring us in catalyzing the development and production of COVID-19 tests, treatments, and vaccines all over the globe. It was a convincing display of NAM's influence. The Human Rights Council adoption, at the initiative of Azerbaijan, of the resolution of equitable, timely, and universal access to vaccine is a testament to the power of mutual support. So when the world needed it most, NAM quickly galvanized efforts to address the crisis, calling for increased global solidarity to overcome the pandemic and its impacts, calling for more international cooperation, for a revitalized multilateralism. But COVID-19 was just a window, a short glimpse into our future, the first of many similar challenges to come. While we are still reeling from the pandemic, scientists predict about a 25% chance of another disease that will be at least as deadly and widespread as COVID within 10 years. Given these odds, we are now in a race against the clock to identify transformative solutions that will make our world safer, more equal, and more sustainable. Excellencies, as we emerge from the dark shadow of the pandemic, what if we embraced a new normal? One rooted in science, innovation, technology, and digitalization. This new science-based normal is a key to building more inclusive societies with more resilient economies. The gradual taming of COVID has given us an opportunity to direct our pandemic recovery towards an environmentally sound and socially just transition. It gives me a particular pleasure to witness transformation in Azerbaijan, a major producer and explorer of fossil fuels, which has become a promoter of green energy and green growth. Excellencies, as President of the General Assembly, I encourage Member States to employ science-based evidence to inform all their decisions, whether relating to water, climate, food, energy, or biodiversity. 2023 is a pivotal year for technology, particularly for artificial intelligence. But how can we ensure that the development benefits of technological advancement translate into improvements all over the world? Without doubt, greater efforts are needed to speed up the processes through which these advancements can become global public goods. Ladies and gentlemen, achieving the Sustainable Development Goals has never been so urgent. In the run-up to the 2023 SDG Summit, the midpoint review of the implementation of the 17 goals, my priority is to greatly scale up the momentum for the realization of the SDGs. I invite you all to follow up on the lessons learned from your voluntary national reviews, to unlock new commitments to spur the adoption of innovative policies. We know that recovery policies require sizable investments. Moreover, they demand a society-wide shift in the way we think about growth, food, energy, and climate. And as COVID laid bare, recovery policies should have twin focuses. Firstly, they should enhance individual well-being, and secondly, they have to be inclusive of all of us. National policy responses must be supported by concerted international action. The international system of trade, finance, and debt must work for and with developing countries, not against them. IFIs, governments, and businesses have a responsibility to align recovery measures with long-term outcomes for sustainability and resilience. And speaking about long-term outcomes, mention must be made of water. Why? Because we have started to experience a water crisis that will get only worse. And nearly all climate change is felt through water. Too much water, or not enough, or water that is too dirty to use and unsafe to drink. And we have breached the planetary boundaries for water for the first time in human history. This means that one of the red lines to keeping humanity and our planet alive has been crossed. To change this state of affairs, next month the UN will host the 2023 Water Conference, the first of this kind since 1977. My message to all governments is, come to the conference at the highest possible level and bring concrete proposals for action to make the necessary transformation from water crisis to a water-secure world, from reactive policies to proactive water action, from threatening uncertainties to evidence-based investments. We know how to tackle this challenge. We have the science, we have the technology, we even have the finances. What we need is political will, your political will. Ladies and gentlemen, NAM is the largest coalition of member states at the United Nations, making you the political group most representative of the General Assembly's membership. NAM has the most power to shift the balance from mistrust and confrontation to dialogue and collaboration. Your perspectives on the post-COVID world are essential. For sustainable development and COVID recovery are two sides of the same coin. You will have the opportunity to showcase them at the SDG Summit in September and the Summit of the Future in 2024. In delivering on my mandate, I will continue to rely on and to count on the support of the NAM member states. I reiterate my deep appreciation to the government and people of the Republic of Azerbaijan, and I look forward to fruitful discussions with you all today. I thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. I now invite Her Excellency Mrs. Tatiana Valavaya, Under-Secretary General of the United Nations, Director General of the United Nations Office in Geneva, who is attending the summit on behalf of His Excellency Mr. Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations. I invite you to deliver the statement, please.
Thank you very much. Mr. President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to represent the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres at the summit-level meeting of the Non-Aligned Movement Contact Group in response to COVID-19 on post-pandemic global recovery. I wish to sincerely thank His Excellency President Aliyev for his warm welcome and hospitality, and to salute Azerbaijan for its able chairmanship of the non-aligned movement since 2019. The non-aligned movement emerged as an important multilateral platform during the Cold War. It played a crucial role in decolonization, formation of new independent states, and democratization of international relations. The end of the Cold War has not diminished the movement's role in the international affairs. On the contrary, the non-aligned movement has gained new momentum in the 21st century as a forum for multilateral collaboration with consistent advocacy for peace, sustainable development, and climate action. The COVID-19 pandemic affected everyone on the planet. In addition to claiming more than 6.8 million lives, it has further exacerbated existing inequalities between the developed and developing countries in their capacities to mitigate the consequences of the pandemic. The pandemic has triggered one of the worst employment crises since the Great Depression. Women, young and older workers, as well as low-skilled workers in the informal economy, bore the brunt of the pandemic's jobs impact. The pandemic has also caused the largest educational disruption, having affected more than 1 billion students worldwide. Likewise, it has amplified the global learning crisis that already existed before. The disruptions to education have been most severe in countries with the lowest human capital index, widening the gap with richest countries. In the same way that impacts of a pandemic have been uneven, the post-pandemic recovery is uneven as well. If we want the recovery to be resilient and truly equitable, we need to start with reforming the global governance system. Our common goal should be to reinvigorate the global governance architecture in such a way that multilateral institutions are fully empowered and equipped to deliver on their mandates and contribute to the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. With 2/3 of the UN member states, the non-aligned movement has a critical role to play in revitalizing multilateral cooperation and forging a new social contract based on inclusivity and sustainability. Its goal to serve as a bridge among its member states and as a voice for justice is as relevant today as it was when the movement was established. Over the past 3 years, non-member states consistently used all multilateral fora, including the UN General Assembly and the Human Rights Council, to call upon the states and other relevant stakeholders to ensure equal distribution of COVID-19 vaccines and to promote access to them as a global public good. Shortly after the start of the pandemic, the movement established a dedicated task force which created a database of basic medical and humanitarian needs for non-member states. The database has become a reference point for the UN specialized agencies in providing necessary support to non-member states in their fight against the pandemic. The parliamentary network of the non-aligned movement, established at the initiative of Azerbaijan, provides a framework for strengthening interparliamentary dimension in the post-pandemic recovery efforts. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in our planning for the post-pandemic future, we need to place a specific emphasis on youth. There are close to 2 billion young people in the world today, 90% of whom live in developing countries. This is the largest generation of young people in history. If the meaningful investments in youth are made and their social, political, and economic engagements are recognized and nurtured, societies may reap the dividends of lasting peace and sustainable development. For delivering our common roadmap, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, We need to enable and empower young people's contribution to a peaceful and sustainable future. Given that NAM countries comprise more than half of the world population, it is even more crucial to support youth-led initiatives. In this context, I wish to convey my special gratitude to Azerbaijan for its initiatives focused on youth engagement, such as the Youth Summit of the Non-Aligned Movement organized here in Baku in July 2022, and the establishment of NAM Youth Network. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we all bear responsibility to steer the post-pandemic recovery in the right direction. The upcoming summits, the 5th Conference of the Least Developed Countries, the SDG Summit, the Climate Ambition Summit, and the Summit of the Future represent historic opportunities to take bold and urgent collective action to advance our global goals. I trust that non-aligned movement will continue its active participation and will promote multilateral approaches further. In conclusion, let me echo the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, who called upon United Nations member states to change the mindset of decision-making. In his report, Our Common Agenda, presented in response to UN 75th Declaration, the Secretary General outlined a vision for an inclusive, networked, and effective multilateralism to better respond to humanity's most pressing needs. Instead of focusing on what may happen to us today, we should look at what will happen to all of us tomorrow and act collectively and decisively. Only by working together, we can pave the way to a better post-pandemic global recovery and efficiently address the global challenges that impact our collective future. Thank you.
Thank you. We shall now proceed to hear the pre-recorded video statement by His Excellency Mr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, Director General of the World Health Organization.
Your Excellency President Aliyev, Your Excellency Minister Bayramov, Excellencies, esteemed guests, dear colleagues and friends, I commend the Republic of Azerbaijan for its committed chairmanship of the non-aligned movement and welcome Uganda as it takes on this important role. WHO would like to thank the non-aligned movement for its partnership in responding to the pandemic, which has deepened inequalities and exacerbated healthcare challenges. As the world pursues a post-COVID recovery, every country must play its part in preparing for, preventing, detecting, and responding rapidly to future epidemics and pandemics. The membership of the non-aligned movement, made up of a broad diversity of countries from around the globe, knows the impact of this crisis all too well. The whole world will benefit from learning from your collective experience on the steps we can take to build safer, healthier, and more equitable systems. First, WHO asks all non-aligned movement members to keep up the momentum to adopt the legally binding international accord on pandemic preparedness and response, which will come before the 77th World Health Assembly in 2024. Second, I also urge you to call for a strengthened global health architecture with empowered and sustainably financed WHO at its center. Third, alongside these global efforts, it also is critical to invest in building local production capacity. Supporting member states with this work in the years to come is a key priority for WHO. Thank you for your engagement and your commitment to solidarity, equity, and multilateralism. I thank you.
Now we proceed to the plenary session of the summit-level meeting. I would like to give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Shavkat Mirziyoyev, President of the Republic of Uzbekistan. Please.
Hurmatli Ilhom Geydarovich, hurmatli delegatsiya rahbarlari, xonimlar va janoblar. Bugungi muloqot guruhi sammitining barcha ishtirokchilarini chin qalbimdan qutlayman. Go'zal va betakror Baku shahridagi anjuman qatnashchilariga ko'rsatilayotgan samimiy mehmondo'stlik va uchrashuvimizni yuksak darajada tashkil etgani uchun Ozarbayjon prezidenti hurmatli Ilhom Geydarovich Aliyevga chuqur minnatdorchilik izhor etaman. Shuni alohida ta'kidlash istar edimki, Ozarbayjon yetakchisi raisligi davrida qo'shilmaslik harakatining xalqaro maydondagi o'rni va nufuzi keskin oshdi. Ushbu muhim platforma doirasida mamlakatlarimizning ko'p tomonlama hamkorligi yangi bosqichga ko'tarildi. Pandemiya davridagi qiyinchiliklarga qaramay o'zaro birdamlik va hamjihatligimiz yanada kuchaydi. Tashkilot tarixida birinchi bor parlament va yoshlar qanotlari tashkil etildi. Bu juda muhim yo'nalishlar. Bu yutuqlarning barchasi qadrli hamkasbim Ilhom Geydarovichning ulkan sa'y-harakatlari va faol tashabbuskorligi a'zo davlatlar manfaatlarini ko'zlab olib borgan amaliy ishlarini yaqqol ifodasidir. Shu o'rinda hurmatli Ozarbayjon prezidentining bugungi murakkab vaziyatga qaramay mamlakat iqtisodiyotining har tomonlama yuksaltirish, xalqning turmush darajasini oshirish, davlatning xalqaro miqyosdagi obro'y va nufuzini mustahkamlash borasida salmoqli natijalarga erishayotganini katta mamnuniyat bilan ta'kidlamoqchiman. Shu bilan birga hurmatli qardoshimning tarixiy adolat tiklangan hududlarga ijtimoiy, iqtisodiy infratuzilma va yangi inshootlar barpo etish, aholiga qulay sharoitlar yaratib berishga qaratilgan bunyodkorlik va ishlarni alohida qayd etishni istardim. Hurmatli sammit ishtirokchilari, tahlillarga qaraganimizda so'nggi yillarda insoniyat pandemiyaga qarshi kurashish bilan bir qatorda iqlim o'zgarishi, tabiiy ofatlar va texnogen fojialarning ayanchli oqibatlarini ham o'z boshidan o'tkazmoqda. Bu muammolarning ko'lami tobora kengayib, ular nafaqat ayrim davlatlar, balki butun bir mintaqalarning xavfsizligi va barqaror taraqqiyoti uchun jiddiy xavf solmoqda. Albatta, bunday murakkab sinovlarni faqatgina birgalikda bir-birimizni yaqindan qo'llab-quvvatlagan holda yenga olamiz. Shu ma'noda O'zbekiston 2030-yilga qadar mo'ljallangan Senday xatli dasturning asosiy maqsadlariga erishish bo'yicha global platforma faoliyatini yanada kuchaytirish tarafdori. Bu kabi favqulodda holatlar sabablarini chuqur o'rganish hamda ofat oqibatlarini samarali bartaraf etish maqsadida qo'shilmaslik harakatining maxsus monitoring va ilmiy tadqiqot tarmog'ini tashkil qilish taklif etaman. Bu institutni O'zbekistonda joylashtirishga tayyormiz. Hurmatli anjuman qatnashchilari, pandemiyadan keyingi davrda geosiyosiy va mafkuraviy ziddiyatlar kuchayib, ularning ta'siridagi jahonning turli nuqtalarida yangi notinchlik o'choqlari paydo bo'layotganini barchamizning albatta jiddiy tashvishga solmoqda. Bundan tashqari, Yaqin Sharq mintaqasi va Afg'onistondagi uzoq vaqtdan buyon saqlanib qolayotgan nizolarni global yechimi hanuzgacha topilgani yo'q. Ayniqsa so'nggi paytlarda barcha davlatlarda o'sib borayotgan terrorizm va ekstremizmning xavf-xatarlariga qarshi tashkilot doirasida amaliy aloqalarni kuchaytirish tobora dolzarb tus olayotganini alohida ta'kidlamoqchiman. Ana shunday tahlikali vaziyatda biz qo'shilmaslik harakatining terrorizmning va har qanday ko'rinishiga qarshi kurashning xalqaro huquqiy bazasini mustahkamlash bo'yicha umumiy intilishlarga yetakchilik qilishga chaqiramiz. Ushbu jarayonda harakatga a'zo bo'lgan davlatlarning Birlashgan Millatlar Tashkiloti doirasida ko'p tomonlama hamkorlikka yanada faollashtirishga qat'iy ishonamiz. Shuningdek, bu muammolarni xalqaro miqyosda samarali hal etish va tizimli muvofiqlashtirishda Birlashgan Millatlar Tashkiloti va uning ixtisoslashgan tizilmalari albatta asosiy rolni bajarishi lozim. Birlashgan Millatlar Tashkilotini isloh qilish jarayonida Xavfsizlik kengashi tarkibida kelgusida qo'shilmaslik harakati a'zolarining doimiy o'rni albatta bo'lishi kerak. Shu o'rinda Afg'on masalasi bo'yicha algoritmning kelishish uchun Birlashgan Millatlar Tashkiloti huzurida xalqaro muzokaralar guruhini tuzishga doir O'zbekiston taklifini qo'llab-quvvatlaysizlar deb ishonaman. Global kun tartibidagi yana bir muhim masala bu davom etayotgan va yakuni hali ko'rinmayotgan iqtisodiy inqiroz asoratlarini yumshatishdir. Barchamiz jahon savdo aloqalarining zaiflashuvi, sanoat va logistika zanjirlari uzilishining salbiy ta'sirini yaqindan bevosita his qilyapmiz. Bundan tashqari oziq-ovqat mahsulotlari, suv va energetika resurslarining tobora taqchil bo'lib borayotganini mamlakatlarimiz ijtimoiy-iqtisodiy tizimlari uchun jiddiy sinov bo'layapti. Ming afsuski ushbu qiyin vaziyatda eng katta og'irlik va salbiy ta'sir avvalo aynan rivojlanayotgan davlatlar zimmasiga tushmoqda. Shuni ta'kidlamoqchimanki, bugungi sammit kabi nufuzli anjumanlar birinchi navbatda o'zaro amaliy hamkorlikning rivojlantirish, qo'shma dasturlar va yirik loyihalarni ilgari surish uchun keng iqtisodiy imkoniyatlar eshigini ochib berishi lozim. Bu xayrli rejani amalga oshirish maqsadida tashkilotimiz sammitlari arafasida qo'shilmaslik harakati iqtisodiy forumini muntazam o'tkazib borishni taklif etaman. Ishonchim komilki, bunday muhim tadbirlar, innovatsiyalar, zamonaviy bilim va ilg'or texnologiyalar almashuvini jadallashtirishga, umuman olganda 4-sanoat inqilobi, xususan aqlli iqtisodiyotni rivojlantirish uchun mustahkam poydevor yaratishga xizmat qiladi. Hurmatli delegatsiya rahbarlari, yana bir muhim masala. Pandemiya salbiy ta'sirini birinchi galda o'sib kelayotgan yoshlarimiz his qilmoqda desam ayni haqiqatni aytgan bo'lamiz. Ularning sifatli ta'lim va professional bilim olish, tibbiy xizmatlardan foydalanish va sport bilan shug'ullanish imkoniyatlari keskin kamaymoqda. Eng yomoni, yosh avlodning hayotda o'z munosib o'rnini topishga bo'lgan ishonchi va qat'iyati susaymoqda. Shuningdek, minglab yoshlarning ongi tafakkuriga buzg'unchi va radikal mafkuralar ta'siri ham tobora kuchaymoqda. Biz o'tgan yili Toshkent shahrida bu masalalar yechimiga qaratilgan yoshlar ta'lim va tarbiyasiga bag'ishlangan 2-chi global konferensiya o'tkazdik. Bu borada siyosat va rejalarimizning uyg'unlashtirish, to'plagan tajribalarimiz bilan o'rtoqlashish maqsadida harakatimiz yoshlar tarmog'ining cheksiz imkoniyatlar sammitini kelgusi yil jahon sivilizatsiyasi markazlaridan biri bo'lgan ko'hna Samarqandda tashkil etish niyatdamiz. Hurmatli do'stlar, biz Ozarbayjon qardoshlarimizni tashkilotimizga samarali raisligi va sammitning muvaffaqiyatli o'tayotgani bilan yana bir bor samimiy tabriklaymiz. Hech shubhasiz bugun bildirgan barcha fikr va mulohazalar, taklif va tashabbuslar xalqlarimizning umumiy ravnaqi va farovonligiga xizmat qiladi. E'tiborlaringiz uchun rahmat.
Thank you. Now I would like to give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Abdul Latif Rashid, President of the Republic of Iraq. Please.
Presidents, head of delegations, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to everybody, and I'm very glad to be present at this summit. I would like to thank President Ilham Aliyev and Azerbaijani government for this summit. Iraq is emerging from the global pandemic crisis, addressing the social contract to improve infrastructures and services, urgent public health and social needs, adapting to structural change, including economic diversification, policy changes, and combating common challenges through collective efforts. Global pandemic made all of us suffer and taught us valuable lessons. Hence, post-pandemic recovery should focus on new social contract, reducing inequality, public access to adequate health care, quality education, income-generating measures, clean air, adequate water, as well as constructions of necessary public infrastructures. The Iraqi government is taking the issues of climate change very seriously, including food security, water scarcity, and climate-induced displacement. Our country is bearing the brunt of climate change challenges, extreme weather conditions, including floods, droughts, dust storms, and rising temperature. Improving infrastructures and services are affecting social stability in Iraq. Iraq is enjoying peace and security after a long period of conflicts, wars, and attacks by terrorism. We must act now and prioritize support for effective communities, raise public awareness, provide emergency assistance and support the agricultural sector, and modernize the water management system and all other necessary activities. It is our collective responsibility to address the root causes of climate change through sensible policies, allocation of appropriate funds, building regional and international partnership, and implementing necessary measures to minimize the risk. Iraq had its share of wars, destructions, at great cost of human lives, resources, and reputation. If there is one valuable lesson that we have learned from our bitterness and from our bitter experience for decades of successive military conflicts, it is the only through peaceful dialogue can meaningful solutions be achieved. We must give peace all chances and engage in constructive and dialogue and combine efforts to eradicate violence and extremism. Iraq is ready to claim its positive role on the regional and global stage, from hosting sport tournaments, building international relations, adhering international treaties, and attracting foreign investment, to collaborations on regional security, the environment, and contributions to global energy security. The new Iraq aspires to become a unifying force for good, bridging the gap between regional powers, including consensus around common challenges such as climate change and environmental and fighting terrorism. The new Iraq is working towards strengthening relationship with its neighbors based on mutual respect through diplomacy, addressing common concern regarding the border security and transboundary water to flow secure and adequate water through just agreements. Moving beyond healing wounds and taking advantage of high oil prices, Iraq's new phase is marked by stability and economic development, ensuring the public has access to just, equality education, adequate health, clean water, food security, and federal government is committed to rendering better public service and build public infrastructures. To meet our citizens' needs, strengthening a relationship between the federal governments and KRG and all other governments in the Republic. It is our collective duty to ensure living standards are improved, promoting peace and stability, protecting environment, diversify the economy, as well as preserving national heritage for future generations. Significant progress has been made in crude oil production, and Iraq continues to invest in gas processing, refining, and petrochemical industries. Supported by appropriate legal frame, Iraq has the potential to become a global competitive petrochemical industry center. Despite protracted challenges, Iraq has finally entered a new phase, leaving behind decades of war and destructions, pursuing its national development vision. Today, there is a peaceful transfer of power in Iraq, and the political stakeholders are determined to find common ground and build national consensus. Following the last general election, the formation of new Iraqi government took some time, but yielded good results as we managed to gather support for the government and to implement its ambitious ministerial program, including rehabilitation and constructions of public infrastructures, addressing the housing shortages, unemployment, as well as initiating long-term strategic projects such as industrial cities, public transport, and investment in petrochemical industries. Here, allow me to remind ourselves about non-aligned movement and its principle. Excuse me. It started in 1961 in Belgrade with 120 member states and 20 observer states. Sorry. The 5 peaceful coexistence principles are still valid. Mutual respect for others' territorial integrity and sovereignty. Mutual non-aggression. Mutual non-interference in domestic affairs. Equality and mutual benefit. Peaceful coexistence. So let us all act to reactivate these noble principles and agree to play a positive role on the world stage to achieve all these principles and avoid war and constructions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, I would like to give the floor to His Excellency Mohammed Al-Manfi, Chairman of the Presidential Council of the State of Libya. Please.
فخامة السيد إلهام علييف رئيس جمهورية أذربيجان رئيس حركة عدم الانحياز، أصحاب الفخامة والمعالي والسعادة السيدات والسادة، يسرني في البداية فخامة الرئيس أن أتقدم إليكم بالتهنئة والشكر على دعوتكم وتنظيمكم هذا الاجتماع المهم، وإلى بلدكم الصديق على كل الجهود التي بذلتموها وتبذلونها لتعزيز دور حركة عدم الانحياز والحفاظ على دورها المحوري في الشؤون الدولية، متمنين لكم التوفيق والنجاح في إدارة أعمال قمة الحركة لمجموعة الاتصال والخروج بنتائج مهمة تتناسب وطموحات شعوبنا، خاصة وإنه ينعقد في فترة بالغة التعقيد على مستوى العلاقات الدولية. السيد الرئيس، ونحن نلتقي للتباحث حول سبل التعاطي مع آثار ما بعد جائحة COVID-19 وآليات مواجهتها على المستوى الجماعي، يجدر بنا مشاركة تجاربنا الوطنية لحشد الجهود والتغلب على آثار الجائحة وتحديات انتشارها التي تجاوزت الحدود الوطنية للدول وكلفت انحساراً في اقتصادات بعض الدول وآثاراً سلبية طالت مختلف القطاعات الخدمية والإنتاجية وخسائر بشرية فادحة خاصة بين كبار السن، وما من سبيل لهزيمة هذا الوباء إلا بالاستجابة العالمية موحدة وقوية. لقد توافقنا على أن هذا الوباء يهدد نحو أكثر خطورة البلدان الفقيرة والأثقل نمواً والتي تمر بصراعات مسلحة وحالة من عدم استقرار، وهي بحاجة عاجلة إلى النهوض بأنظمتها الصحية الهشة وتوفير ما تحتاجه من مستلزمات الوقاية وأدوية العلاج. وليبيا التي تمر بمرحلة انتقالية صعبة ليست خارج هذه الدائرة، وهي إذ تتطلع أولاً إلى جهود دولية صادقة لحل سلمي للأزمة التي تشهدها البلاد، فإنها حالياً بحاجة أيضاً إلى تعزيز التعاون مع أجهزة الأمم المتحدة المعنية والشركاء الآخرين بما يحقق ويكفل تنفيذ ما وضعته من خطط وبرامج ليس فقط في السيطرة على الوباء بل للحد من آثاره على مختلف القطاعات الخدمية والإنتاجية. وفي الوقت الذي نرحب فيه بالتقدم النسبي المحرز على المستوى الدولي في اتجاه القضاء على وباء COVID-19، فإننا ندرك أن الطريق أمام العديد من الدول لا يزال طويلاً، فالقضاء على الوباء بشكل كامل يتطلب تحقيق العدالة في وصول الجميع إلى اللقاح بشكل سهل وميسور، كما أن القضاء على الوباء وحده لا يكفي، إذ لا ننسى أن الجائحة خلفت آثاراً سلبية خطيرة على نواحي الحياة الاجتماعية والاقتصادية، شملت كافة الفئات داخل المجتمعات وفيما بينها بنسب متفاوتة، وعكست مسار التقدم المحرز نحو تحقيق أهداف التنمية المستدامة 2030، ومعالجة ذلك يتطلب بالإضافة إلى الجهود الوطنية تضامناً إقليمياً وعالمياً. وفي هذا الصدد لا يسعنا إلا أن نثمن الدور الذي تقوم به الأمم المتحدة ووكالاتها المختصة ومنظمة الصحة العالمية للحد من الآثار السلبية للجائحة. السيد الرئيس، لقد أثبتت الأحداث والمتغيرات التي شاهدها العالم أن حركة عدم الانحياز التي تأسست قبل أكثر من 6 عقود ما زالت قادرة على القيام بدور فعال ورائد في تعزيز السلم والأمن الدوليين ومساعدة الدول الأقل نمواً والحفاظ على التعاون ومكافحة الأخطار والتهديدات، وهو ما يتجلى في تخطيها للبعد السياسي إلى جوانب إنسانية أخرى لخدمة شعوبنا على الرغم من تلك المتغيرات، ولتحقيق الغايات المنشودة من وراء تأسيس واستمرار هذه الحركة الفاعلة. ندعو إلى تعزيز الآليات والتنسيق والتشاور على المستويات كافة، ويسرني أن أجدد حرص بلادي على العمل معكم وفق أسس القانون الدولي والعدالة بما يضمن احترام سيادة بلداننا وخصوصياتها التي لا تعيق توسع مجالات التعاون والتواصل. تقبلوا جزيل الشكر والعرفان وتمنياتنا لكم بموفر الصحة ولبلدانكم السلامة والاستقرار. أشكركم السيد الرئيس.
Thank you. Now I would like to give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Serdar Berdimuhamedov, President of Turkmenistan. Please.
Hurmatly vekiliyetlerin baştonları ve ağzaları, hanımlar ve janaplar, ilki bilen şu samete çağırmak başlangıcı bilen çıkış edenligi, onun ören quvve qurulanlığı, mihman tüyürlüğü üçün Azerbaycan Respublikanın prezidenti, onun Al Hedreti İlham Aliyeva minnettarlık bildiriyen. Koronavirus pandemiyasının neticeleri häzirki döwürde ören mühim ve düýpli meselelerin biri bolup durýar. Elbette bu mesele diňe lukmançylyk meselesi däldir. Ol günden güne ähli-umumy ösüşüň siyasi, iqtisadi ve durmuş insanperwer uğurlaryna täsir edýär. Biziň ählimizin duçar bolýan ýöneki bolmadyk ýagdaýymyzy ýeňip geçmek üçin döwletleriň we halkara institutlarynyň özara gatnaşyklarynyň täze bir meňiş usullaryny gözlemegiň zerurdygyny görkezdi. Şeýle şertlerde din hukuklyk, adalatlyk we insanperwerlik garaşlaryny eýerýän döwletleriň birleşik hökmüne Qoşulmama Hərəkatının orny artýar. COVID-19 netijelerini yeňip geçmäge bizden işçiň we başlangyçlar bilen goşmagy, özara hyzmatdaşlyk etmeň anyk we düşnükli ugurlaryny hemde iler tutulýan taraplaryny beýan etmegi talap edýär. Ilkinji nowatda gurrun bilelikdäki işiň umumy siyasi dünýägaraş esaslaryny emele getirmek barada barýar. Onun esasyna bolsa raýdaşlyk, özara kömek, bölme jogapkärçilik ýöreleri goýulmalylar. Diňe şeýle edilenne bilelikde tagallarlar birleşdirip pandemiýanyň netijelerini ýeňip geçmek üçin şertler döredip biler. Onun gaýtadan ýüze çykmalygyny kepillendirip, zerur bolan gora usullaryny döredip, iqtisadi ve sowda gatnaşyklarymyzy dikerler. Pandemiýanyň 7 tapgarynyň tamamlanmagynyň ondan doly üstün çykylanlygyny aňlatmaýanlygyny äşgärdir. Hoşçoňa görä de biziň hyzmatdaşlygymyzyň derejesini diňe bir peteltmän eýsem ony ýygyderli dikelmek hem zerurdur. Bu orada ilkinji nowatdaky wezipeleriň arasynda bir Qoşulmalyk Hereketine girýän ýurtlaryň ilmi lukmançylyk ugry boýunça hyzmatdaşlygyň ulgamlaşdyrylmagyny görýär. Howply ýokanç kesellere garşy görüşmekde tejribäni, usuliýetleri alşmagy işleňleşdirmek, bu işi ýygyderli we hemişelik esasda ýola goýmak talap edilýär. Men ýurtlarymyzyň her biriniň kemmelere derur bolup biljek gymmatly tejribesiniň üstünlikli misallarynyň bardygyna inanýan. Şunun bilen barada biz Qoşulmalyk Hereketiniň ýokanç keselleri garşy görüşmek boýunça biziň birleşigimiziň ähli agzalary üçin ýeterli bolan bütew maglumat we usuliýet bankyny döretmegiň üstüne goýlanmagy teklip edýär. Bu orada bilelikde işlemek üçin Qoşulmalyk Hereketiniň lukmançylyk we sanitariýa edaralarynyň ýürüýte maslagatyny çağırmak meselesini aral maslahatlaşmagy maksada laýyk hasaplaýar. Maslahata tejribe geçen lukmanlary, alymlary, bilermenleri, lukmançylyk beleleşiginiň beýleki wekillerini, Şeylerim täze hoplara karşı durmağa ve onun bilen bağlı ýagdaýlar ýeňip geçmäge gatnaşan başga düzümleri hemde edaralary çekmeli diýip pikir edýän. Elbette bu ähli beýleki gyzyklanma bildirýän döwletler we guramalar üçin açyk bolmalylar. Bütün dünýä saglyk goraş guramasy bilen biziň asnaşykly hyzmatdaşlygymyz COVID-19 netijelerini ýeňip geçmekde üstünlikli işlemegiň ören möhüm şertidir. Umuman bütün dünýä saglyk goraş guramasynyň öz üstüne ýüklenen wezipeleriň hötdesinden gelenligini wagt görkezi ve onun başarılıgyna hemde kämilligine şüphelenme esas ýok. Şunun bilen bagly biz bütün dünýä saglyk goraş guramasyny hemişe siyasi ruhu ve beýleki orlarda gollaw bermäge goşulmalyk hereketini çağırýar. Bu gurama bilen üýtgüsi hyzmatdaşlyk etmeligini tasdiklamaly. Umuman dünýä meşwerini adamlaryň ömrüni we saglygyny gorumakda onuň baş utgaşdyrjy ornuny iqrar etmeli. Men emelegilen ýagdaýda goşulmalyk hereketi bilen bütün dünýä saglyk goraş guramasynyň arasynda odaly bilen biziň ýurtlarymyzyň lukmançylyk bilelikleriniň ugry boýunça hyzmatdaşlyk etmegiň netijeli iň az resmilikler bilen ýola goýmak zerurlygy ýüze çykdy diýip pikir edýän. Gelen şeyle işlemegiň ülüňleriniň we görnüşleriniň üstüne oýlanaly. Pursatdan peýdalanyp bütün dünýä saglyk goraş guramasynyň işini Türkmenistanyň doly gollaýanlygyny beýan etmek hem isleýän. Bu guramanyň ýolbaşçylaryna we işgärlerine tutan ýerlik hemde başarnykly zähmet üçin çüýsürekden minnetdarlyk hem bildirýän. Biziň ýurdumyz bu gurama bilen geljekde hem ysynçykly hyzmatdaşlyk eder. Bundan beýlek hem oňa hemme taraplaýyn ýardam bermäge hem taýýardyr. Şunun bilen baglykda Türkmenistan özüniň uzal teklip eden ilmi diplomatiýa boýunça köp taraply hyzmatdaşlygy işleňleşdirmäge gönüktirilen başlangyçlaryny öňe sürmäge dowam eder. Biz hususan Türkmenistanyň şu aşagdaky halkara we sivit gurallaryny, ýagny bütün dünýä saglyk goraş guramasynyň koronawirusynyň genomyny öwrenmek boýunça ýürüte maksatnamasyny, öýkün sowuklamasyna garşy görüşmek boýunça köp taraply guraly, ýokonç keseller bejermek we olaryň öňüne almak boýunça usuliýet merkezini, Merkez Aziya epidemiologiýa, virusologiýa we bakteriologiýa sivit merkezini döretmek barada ozal öňe süren tekliplerini hem tasdiklaýar. Şeýleýän biz bütün dünýä saglyk goraş guramasynyň ýardam bermegine we utgaşdyrmagyna derman serişlerini we lukmançylyk enzamlaryny bu urda ýeterlik bolmadyk döwletlere wagtyny hemde bökdünsiz eltmek üçin has netijeli we adalatly ulgamy ýola goýmak derur diýip hasap edýär. Bu wagtda Birleşen Milletler Guramasynyň insanperwer ugurly beýleki düzümleri bilen hem hyzmatdaşlyk etmek ýollaryny işçiň ulanmaly diýip pikir edýär. Hormatly maslahatda gatnaşyjylar, geljek döwürde halkara ykdysady we sowda gatnaşyklaryny ýygy dikeltmegi kazanmalylar. Şonuň bilen barlykda goşulmalyk hereketiniň döwletlerini adatdan daşary ýagdaýlarda halkara ulgamlarynyň durnuklylygyny dikeltmegiň hemde berkitmegiň üstüne netijeli işlemege çağırýar. Bunun üçin gowy esas Birleşen Milletler Guramasynyň baş assambleýasynyň Türkmenistanyň başlangyjy boýunça 2021-nji ýylyň 29-njy iýulyna kabul eden koronavirus keseliniň pandemiýasy we ondan soňky döwürde durnukly ösüşiň öznüksiz we ygtybarly halkara ýük daşamalaryny üpçün etmek maksady bilen uluň ähli görnüşleriniň ara baglanşygyny berkitmek adly kararnamasy bar. Şol bir wagtda biz baş assambleýanyň deňde çykalwady bolmadyk ösýän ýurtlaryň ähli umumy uluň hyzmatdaşlygyny ösdürmekde we berkitmekde ornuny ýokarlandyrmak hakynda kararnamasyny işlep taýýarlamaga girişmeli diýip hasap edýär. Şeyler resminama bu döwletlerin bähfitlerini öňe sürmäge, netijeli itergi bermäge ukyply bolar. Qoşulmalyk hereketine girýän bu döwletlerin köpüsi degişli meselelerin ähmiýetini we oňa düşünmegi beýan eder. Dünya jemgyýetçiliginiň olaryň çözülmegini meýillerini görkezler. Türkmenistan hemmelerin netijeli teklipleri ve başlanmışları için açık bolan resminamany taýýarlamaga girişmäge taýýardyr. Biz goşulmayan ýurtlar bu işe gatnaşýarlar diýip hasaplaýar. Şeýleýän pandemiýanyň yaramaz ykdysady netijelerini azaltmak bilen bagly Türkmenistan Birleşen Milletler Guramasynyň ugurdaş düzümleri ilkinji nowatda bolsa ykdysady we durmuş geňeşi bilen goşulmalyk hereketiniň hyzmatdaşlygyny güýçlendirmek zerur diýip hasap edýär. Ösýän ýurtlaryň kanuny hukuklaryny we bähfitlerini goramakda, halkara ykdysady gatnaşyklaryna adalatlygy hemde din hukuklugy işçen galanmakda. Goşulmalyk hereketiniň ýurtlarynyň tagallalaryny birleşdirmek COVID-19 soňky ählimumy ykdysady şertlerinde bizim işimizin ören möhüm tarapy bolup durýar. Şu meselelerde bizim maksadymız aýdyn we dogry beýan edilmelidir. Ykdysady gatnaşyklaryň dikeldilmegi ösýän ýurtlara dilel ýetirmelidir. Olaryň hasabyna geçirilmeli diýerler. Men häzirki döwürde bizde dünýä ykdysady we suwda guruluşynyň täze ulgamyny öretmäge mümkinçiligiň bardygyna inanýan. Bu ulgamda kemsedilmäge, emeli päskelçiliklere, serişleriň adalatsyz paýlanmagyna urun bolmaly. Halklaryň we döwletleriň ykdysady öz başlyklaryny ikrar etmekde goşulmalyk hereketiniň orny berk we sallamly bolmalylar. Biz öz ykdysady gün tertibimizi başlangyçlar arkaly we jogapkärçilik bilen öňe sürmelidir. Şunun bilen barlykda energetika hupsuzlygynyň ählimumy ulgamyny öretmäge goşulmayan döwletleriň işçen gatnaşmagy ärt ul ähmiýete eýe bolýar. Bu bolsa adalatly we aýdyn ýörelgelere, energiýa çeşmelerine we olary eltmeň serişlerine din hukukly el ýeterligi esaslanýar. Energiýa serişlerini iwerjileriň, satyn alyjylaryň we üstwasar geçirjileriň bähfitleri hasap almagy we ikrar etmäge dayanýar. Goşulmalyk hereketiniň döwletleriň durnukly ösüş maksatlaryny, şol sanyna onuň azyk hupsuzlygy ýaly bölegini durmuşa geçirmekde netijeli işi COVID-19 soňky dikeldiş döwrüniň ören möhüm tarapy bolup durýar. Pandemiýa bu mesele çözülmedik ilaty dol bahaly iýmit almayan döwletleriň ýagdaýyny ýaşgar etdi. Eslenlik adamyň, olar bilen ähli çağalaryň aýrylmaz hukugy, saglygynyň we kadal ötüşiniň esasy şerti hökmüne doly bahaly iýmiti kepillendirmekde döwletleriň we sevdikleriň azyk serişlerini el ýeterligini üçin etmek meselelerine seredilenine goşulmayan ýurtlaryň garaýşlarynyň bütewligi ve berkligi zerurdur. Elbette COVID-19 soňky dikeldiş döwrüniň ähli sanalyp geçilen wedipeler diňe puhta parahatçylyk we din hukuklyk şertlerine mümkindir. Şoňra da geljekki döwürde goşulmayan ýurtlary ählimumy durnukly we hupsuzlygy garanmak ugrunnaky görüşde öz birleşdirilen çemeleşmelerini güýçlendirmäge çagyrýar. Gapbagarçylyklary we dartgynlygyň güýjenmegini ýeňip geçmeliligini, döwletara gatnaşyklaryna hormatlamak medeniýetini, ananşmak we öňünden saklamagy garanmalygyny belleýär. Häzirki döwrüň dünýä tertibiniň we hukuklyk guruluşynyň syýasy hukuk bünyady hökmünde, halkara hukugynyň hemde Birleşen Milletler Guramasynyň tertipnamasynyň ornunyň puhtalandyrylmagynyň nyktaýar. Ma'lum bolşýaly şu ýyly Türkmenistanyň başlangyjy boýunça Birleşen Milletler Guramasynyň baş assambleýasy dialog paragatçylygyň kepil hökmüne halkara ýyl diýilip elan etdi. Men şu bilen münmerden bu başlangyjy gollap çykşadan goşulmalyk hereketiniň ähli döwletlerine minnetdarlyk bildirýän. Onların ençemeti değişli kararnamanın avtordaşları boldular. Bunun için, bunun öyle bizim maksatlarımızın ve niyetlerimizin birdigini, birleşimizin parakatçılığı, söyücü, insanperver yürürlüğüne viparlığını önemli görküzdü. Sözümün ahirine Qoşulmama Hərəkatına neticeli başlıklık edenliği, şunun ve geleceğin önünde duran maksatlarını yerine getirmeye koşun için Doğanlık Azerbaycan Respublikasına minnettarlık bildiriyor. Dinlediğiniz için çok sağ olun.
Thank you. Now I'd like to give the floor to Her Excellency Željka Cvijanović, Chairwoman of the Presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Thank you. Your Excellencies, honorable representatives, and distinguished colleagues. I'm honored to have the opportunity to address you at this important gathering. First, I would like to express my gratitude for the invitation to the President of Azerbaijan and the Chair of the Non-Aligned Movement, Mr. Aliyev. It is a true privilege to be here today and discuss many important issues, not only at a symbolic level, but concretely through the idea of partnership and solidarity. This gathering is happening at a time, just like in the period when the movement was formed, when the world desperately needs peace, relaxation, dialogue, and restraint from the intent to make an existing problem bigger. The global challenges we currently face point to the importance of respecting the timeless and universal values and principles based on which the non-aligned movement was founded and rests today. The world we live in is changing at a dramatic pace and unfortunately not in a positive direction. The coronavirus pandemic has left serious and long-term consequences throughout the world. They primarily include lost human lives, and besides in medicine and healthcare, they are visible in almost every other segment of society too. Due to the pandemic, economic challenges have become even more complex and multiplied, both globally and in the individual countries, especially in the poor ones. At the height of the pandemic, the differences between developed and developing countries were especially pronounced in terms of access and distribution of medical supplies, such as respirators and medical protection equipment, or the vaccines in the later phase. The principles of solidarity and mutual assistance retreated before the fear of an invisible enemy that spread at a tremendous speed, defying all the restrictive measures introduced by the authorities throughout the world to preserve their populations. However, there were also positive examples, such as the actions of those countries and international organizations that offered their assistance to the most vulnerable. As a representative of an observer country, I want to praise the role of the non-aligned movement, which was then and still is at the center of multilateral efforts aimed at overcoming the negative effects of the coronavirus. Unfortunately, the period of gradual recovery, which followed the stabilization of the epidemiological situation in the world, was marked by new global security challenges, armed conflicts, and dramatic sharpening of geopolitical rivalries. So it sometimes seems that the post-COVID recovery, like many other important topics in the previous year or years, has gone to the background, at least as far as the media and their focus are concerned. Yet the lack of media interest does not mean that these challenges have disappeared or diminished. That is why I consider it very important that within this summit we have the opportunity to draw the attention of the international public to the problem of post-COVID recovery, as well as to the importance of making additional efforts to overcoming negative effects of the pandemic. That task is not easy at all, considering the complex circumstances and the huge mess the world is in at this moment. War, sanctions, and terrorist attacks demonstrate that the language of force and weapons has prevailed over diplomacy and dialogue, and sometimes it seems over reason itself. And while people get killed, a huge part of the world has turned into cheerleader camps that are putting out a fire with gasoline. In the spiral of violence and war hysteria, those who appeal for peace and dialogue, refusing to align themselves with one of the opposing camps, are viewed with suspicion, almost with hostility. As you know, 3 decades ago, a bloody civil war raged in the territory of the former Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, one of the founders of the non-aligned movement. Especially tragic was the conflict in Bosnia and Herzegovina, in which almost 100,000 people died. Unfortunately, we know very well what war is and what sanctions are and what consequences they bring, because we still feel them today, 28 years after the end of the armed conflict. That is why we sincerely sympathize with and mourn every lost life in Ukraine and in other parts of the world, because we know that they are not numerical data, but human beings whose lost lives caused deep wounds to their forever forlorn families. The tragedy we went through compels us to talk about it from a human and humanitarian point of view, with the full awareness that the price of war is enormous, just like the importance of peace. And especially at this very place, because the principles on which the non-aligned movement was founded are the only possible path to peace and long-term stabilization of the current geopolitical and security challenges. The world urgently needs a reaffirmation of the principles of peaceful coexistence between countries and peoples, mutual respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity, and non-interference in the internal affairs of other countries. Within the collective tripartite presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina, I strongly advocate these values, as well as the consistent respect for the domestic and international rule of law. International law was not established to be a dead letter or a buffet from which everyone on a case-by-case basis takes what suits them. It was defined as universal, with a clear intent that it should be respected equally by all entities, regardless of size, population, and their military or economic power. The consequences of the collapse of the global order based on international law are instability and anarchy, in which no one wins in the long term and everyone loses to a greater or lesser extent. I'm convinced that among us here, there's a high degree of agreement regarding the fundamental values on which the international order should stand, among which peace, stability, and cooperation are the most important ones. I'm pleased that as a representative of an observer country, I'm attended for the first time the gathering of the countries of the movement that has shown the ability to survive and maintain its importance in spite of global changes. The fact is that the circumstances in which it arose in 1961 in Belgrade, the capital of then Yugoslavia, and today the capital of Serbia, are different but not entirely incomparable to the current ones. It is also the fact that many non-aligned countries, then poor, have managed to change from underdeveloped into developed modern countries. This is exactly why the countries of the movement represent an excellent framework for a new economic cooperation, and thus it is important to rehabilitate economic and business contacts between them. Both then and today, the non-aligned movement strives to preserve the international balance and affirm cooperation and mutual respect in the bilateral relations of its members, but also in the global order. That is why I'm convinced that our tradition of non-alignment, founded on the legacy of the former Yugoslav foreign policy, can be a strong bridge of cooperation and understanding in the future, both through strengthening of bilateral relations with the member countries of the movement and through participating in multilateral initiatives of general global importance. We have many common challenges, whether it is post-COVID recovery or the current insecurity and geopolitical turbulence. Therefore, I strongly believe that we can also jointly reach certain conclusions that could contribute to overcoming these challenges. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we continue our proceedings. We shall now hear the statement of His Excellency Mr. Salvador Antonio Valdez Mesa, Vice President of the Republic of Cuba. Mr. Vice President, the floor is yours.
Muchas gracias, el señor Presidente Ilham Aliyev, excelentísimo jefe de Estado y de Gobierno, jefe de delegación, Excelencia, estimados participantes, agradezco al gobierno de Azerbaiyán, presidente del Movimiento de Países No Alineados, por convocar esta importante reunión y las hospitalidades brindadas a la delegación cubana. La recuperación de nuestros países en la etapa pospandemia es tarea compleja. En la pasada cumbre del Movimiento de Países sobre este tema, el presidente de Cuba, Miguel Díaz-Canel Bermúdez, expresó, y cito, «No es posible predecir con exactitud la dimensión de las consecuencias de la COVID-19. La alta cifra de infectados y las cuantiosas pérdidas humanas muestran un devastador impacto en un mundo cada vez más interconectado que, sin embargo, no ha sido capaz de enaltecer esta interconexión de manera solidaria y hoy paga el precio de su incapacidad para corregir los graves desequilibrios sociales». Fin de la cita. Sus palabras mantienen plena vigencia. Nuestras naciones se ahogan en deudas impagables, sin acceso a los recursos financieros necesarios para invertir en la recuperación. Las medidas coercitivas unilaterales aplicadas contra varios países miembros de nuestro movimiento en franca violación del derecho internacional y la Carta de Naciones Unidas agravan este complejo panorama. En nombre del pueblo y el gobierno de Cuba, agradezco el valioso y firme respaldo al movimiento, al legítimo reclamo de que cese el ilegal e injusto bloqueo económico, comercial y financiero impuesto a nuestro pueblo por más de 6 décadas. Agradecemos también las condenas a la arbitraria inclusión de Cuba en la espuria lista de estados patrocinadores del terrorismo que confecciona unilateralmente el Departamento de Estado de Estados Unidos. Excelencias, a pesar del recrudecimiento del bloqueo a niveles sin precedentes, Cuba desarrolló 5 candidatos vacunales, 3 de los cuales se convirtieron en vacunas altamente efectivas contra la COVID-19. Nuestro país se encuentra en los de mayor índice de vacunación a nivel mundial, teniendo hoy el 90,3% de la población vacunada con 3 dosis. El esfuerzo desplegado por la comunidad científica y médica cubana permitió también la fabricación de ventiladores pulmonares cuando las restricciones del bloqueo nos impidieron importarlos. Y hoy contamos con mayor capacidad de respuesta ante situaciones críticas. Aprovechamos las capacidades existentes, lo que ha contribuido a fortalecer nuestra industria biotecnológica y médico-farmacéutica y el sistema de salud cubano. Invitamos a los países no alineados al uso clínico de nuestros medicamentos biotecnológicos y reiteramos la disposición de apoyar a la campaña de vacunación anti-COVID-19, donde sea necesario. Bajo ninguna circunstancia dejaremos de ser solidarios. Lo hemos demostrado, incluido con el envío de 58 brigadas médicas a 42 países y territorios durante la pandemia. Excelencias, hacemos un llamado a todos los gobiernos, organismos internacionales y donantes, sin excepción, a movilizar los recursos financieros necesarios, transferir tecnologías, viabilizar los mecanismos de creación de capacidades y cumplir los compromisos en materia de ayuda oficial al desarrollo, vitales para la recuperación postpandémica, sobre la base del estricto respeto a la soberanía de los países receptores. Corresponde a nuestro movimiento continuar impulsando la cooperación y solidaridad internacionales para enfrentar los retos que tenemos por delante. En su condición de actual presidente del Grupo de los 77 y China, Cuba trabajará sin descanso para representar y defender los legítimos intereses de los países en desarrollo. Unámonos y concertémonos acciones entre ambas agrupaciones para hacer valer las justas reivindicaciones y aspiraciones de nuestras naciones del sur. Para ello, cuenten siempre con el apoyo y la solidaridad de Cuba. Muchas gracias por su atención.